Good morning, everyone. So it's a Saturday, sweet. I want my presentation. Oh, sweet. Oh, here. Sorry to torture you with cakes in the morning. I hope you had them, or you at least had breakfast. If not, well, I'm sorry for you. So what we're going to be speaking today, we're going to be presenting about the most complicated thing that nobody wants to really talk about. It's how you actually manage to deliver a product within a gigantic enterprise. And what is the main difference between a startup and an enterprise? So a little bit just about me, why you should listen to me. I'm a product owner or slash manager at Pentalog. You decide what is what. I'm going to talk about it later, why I make this specific distinction. I'm also a startup consultant for the last 6 years. I have helped more than 200 startups. I actually stopped counting at this point just because I'm too lazy for that. And I also do tracking for startups because startups are usually very lazy. They don't want to do customer development. Surprise, surprise. They want to make a good logo, but they don't actually want to find customers. And also, I'm a lecturer at UTM. I teach professional personal development specifically for IT students at FAF specialty. So enough about me. Oh, last thing about me. This is my personal motto. Making things harder is very easy, and making things simpler is very hard. So this presentation is exactly about that. I'm not going to dive too much into details because that's not interesting. That's what we can discuss over coffee break. So please feel free to approach me, and we can discuss more in depth. So, for whom this presentation is interesting, because that's what you should always say. So, product owners, project managers, of course, your usual startup owners. Are there any startups here? No? Oh, okay, a couple. Okay, so if you're thinking of doing a startup, this presentation is going to be very useful for you. Or if you work in a small company, designers, of course. How could I come to a design conference and not make it to design? Any agile team members, developers, QAs, anyone who basically works in an agile team, this is useful for you. And especially for people that I call pochi singur svakasta. Okay. So the company has no name. Unfortunately, I can't tell you because NDA, that's very common in our practice. So I can't deliberately tell you which company, the story of which company I'm going to be telling you about, but I can tell you and describe it a little bit how big and amazing it was. So it's a company that works with B2B and B2C sales with 50K employees, at least, around the entire globe. So it has representatives around all the markets. In the department I was specifically working, we had at least 200 digital sales people. So it's IT people, product managers. I think it was close to 300, but I digress. We had 40 active product teams. So that means like developer, QA, designer. So like each team is like about from 6 to 10 people. So 40 teams in just one department in a gigantic company. In our specific department, we had 6 products. And I was working in a product with agile concept, and we had 7 teams on one single product, which is amazingly hard to manage, and that's what we're going to be talking about specifically today. So for those who are in agile, we were working in Scrum-less, large-scale Scrum. Really recommend using it. I enjoyed it a lot. So what's the problem we're going to specifically be talking about in enterprises? It's mainly about growing product teams is very painful in absolutely any company you make. And as more you grow as a startup, because I'm consulting both startups, I'm consulting middle companies. Don't squint like that. It's going to be good in a moment. Okay, so when you're a startup, it's pretty simple, actually. You're building your small rocket that you would just want to launch in space, see if it works or not. You have like 10 people at most, pretty nice and cozy, very nice. And then when you're getting bigger and bigger and bigger, you build basically the ISS. And you have a bunch of old modules, because if you're thinking enterprise is nice and it works with the latest technology, that is half true. So yes, you develop the new products with new technology, but you have ancient technology, at least 20 to 30 years old, that you can't get rid of, so you have to support it. Either you like it or not. That's the rules of the game. So yeah, when you get here, you're going to have legacy code, legacy applications, legacy product tools, anything, and sadly, you can't get rid of it. You can, but it's a very painful, slow process and very, very expensive. That's why businesses don't bother changing them. So let's break it down a little bit more and dive into the specifics. So when you're a startup, what are the main characteristics of a startup for you to understand the problem in depth? So we have a small team, 1 to 10 people, pretty cool, pretty easy to manage. You have just one Kanban board for your entire team, like small, like 10 tasks, 20 tasks at a time working. Very cool, very cool and easy. You basically don't need your daily stand-up in the mornings because you just grab your coffee from the local Frappuccino shop and you just talk it over in the morning and it's everything fine. Everybody knows who's doing what. And you're also sitting in the same room most likely, so it's very easy to reach out to anybody and just talk directly. You take it for granted. When you work in an enterprise, that's a luxury. And there's no support roles needed, like HR people, office managers. You don't have any of these people to bother you to do stuff. Like you're basically your own small company and you do everything inside like a small, cozy family. Well, when you get into enterprise, it changes drastically. You have a gigantic team. So you saw, in my case, it was 50,000 people. Interesting to interact with. Sometimes in a span of 2 weeks, I had to communicate with from 50 to 100 people. You barely can talk in your social life with 10 people, but in a company you have to interact with up to 100 people in 2 weeks. Very cool. You have different management frameworks. So your top management thinks waterfall. I think I don't need to explain, we're all knowledgeable here. So they want specific delivery results and you are working in Agile and you're kind of like, well, we'll have to be flexible, and management is like, we understand you want to be flexible, but we need precise delivery results. So there's a problem there as well. You have endless update meetings. So basically when I open my calendar on Mondays, like already half of my calendar is only meetings. And at the end of the day, it's all of it only in meetings. So you have to basically just block some slots in your calendar so you can actually do some work. Or you stay in the meeting and you actually do your work. And you can focus on two things, of course. And then somebody calls your name. Hey, Roma, what do you think about this? Like, sorry, what? My internet was down. Can you repeat, please, the question? That's a classic. Because otherwise you don't have time to do it. You have crowded offices, so you can be working in a gigantic building, or in my case, it was basically 10 buildings in a gigantic campus, and the only way to communicate with people was basically Microsoft Teams, no other option. And tons of support staff that bothers you with things to do. You have to sign this document, you have to do this, and this. You have to go to your medical checkup. You have to do all of these things. So yeah, enterprises are not fun. Sorry to spoil it, but if somebody's going to enterprise, it's not going to be fun. Well, it's fun if you like it. I like it a lot, but it's not for everybody. So this is the main difference. So now we know the problem. We understand the premises, what's the difference between a startup and an enterprise. Let's dive into and go back to the kitchen, because I promised you cakes, right? So we have to get back to those layers, delicious. So let's start with the ingredients. So surprise, surprise, the main ingredients of building a product are people. And when you're in a small startup, you basically what you have, your CEO, your CTO, maybe a business developer, and if you're super lucky, you have a designer. Designers are usually hard to find for startups. They're very scarce. So for those product managers, first person you have to find is actually a designer. They're very expensive, trust me on that, and hard to find. But if you find them, you have to keep them. So, but I digress. The main thing is like you have only like 4 to 5 different people that do most of the stuff. In an enterprise, it's way more fun. So let me show you all of the different roles that you can find in enterprise. And all of these roles are present both in the company I worked in. And actually, I showed this presentation to other people, and they told, yeah, it's the exact same thing. So your typical Scrum Master, not going to stop on that person. But for me, this is the most saintest person in an Agile team, because basically this is your tamada in a team. If you have an amazing Scrum Master, we will have an amazing team. A tamada is your wedding coordinator, just in Romanian, just for Francesco to understand better. So yeah, if you have an amazing tamada in the team, you're going to be very happy. Trust me on that. Then you have your project delivery manager. Who is that? Because you don't have this position in a lot of companies. When you have a big-ass company with 50K employees, you need a project delivery manager. So basically, this is the person that is responsible for staffing the team and focusing on delivering exactly on time the project and unblocking any blocks for the team. I don't know, maybe there's a dependency. You need some hardware. That's the person to go to. Then you have the tech project manager. So this project manager is responsible for the tech side, any like technical problems, technical blockers. They're responsible usually for buying out the infrastructure and stuff like that. Then you have the regular project manager, because you need those, of course, because so basically in the company I was working in, project managers will basically, whenever you need some kind of manager, you go just assign a project manager in it, and he does all of the jobs that are needed. So this is like your jack of all trades that does anything you ask them to do. Then we have the business analyst, amazing people. I really love them because they focus more on the data and helping the business specifically grow, which is extremely important, but they don't necessarily focus on the product. So sometimes they focus on optimizing the processes, improving the ecosystem, anything that reduces cost and increases sales, or like basically earn more money as much as they can. But they don't do it via the product, they do it via improving the processes. Then you have the proxy product owner. So who is that? So in my case, we work at Pentalog, so we offer two types of product people. We offer product owners and proxy product owners. The main difference is how much access and how much control a product owner has versus a proxy product owner. Proxies usually have less access. Somebody like a product manager from the client side says to Pentalog team, hey, proxy product owner, here's the features we need to do, transform them into tickets, please do them. Pretty boring, but it is what it is. If you want to start a career in product management, you have to start from proxy anyway, so there's no way skipping that, sorry. Then you have your regular product owner. So a product owner usually is a person that is directly communicating with the business side. So they actually have some control over what happens in the business. And last but not least, and we have, of course, the product designer. So in a big corporation, you really want to have one. Why? Because these people actually help you have a coherent and consistent delivery of a product. Because usually what happens in big enterprises, they don't have that person, or UX director, for a matter of fact, like they kind of do the same thing, but depends. UX director is usually like around the entire company or an entire department. Product designer is usually dedicated for one specific product. Their job is to comply with the design code and the design rules of any of the entire company. And last but not least is the product manager. So the person that talks directly with the stakeholders, talks with the clients, basically they talk with everyone. Their main job is to be the voice of the customer and deliver the features that are actually useful. I know I'm boring you to death, but sorry, I told you enterprise is boring. Yeah, but this are all of the roles, or so you thought, because there's more. I'm going to torture you just a little bit more. Sorry for that, but I promised you I'm going to tell you about enterprise. So we have the project director. So it's a dedicated person that is responsible for budgeting, is responsible for keeping good relationships with the stakeholders, because you know what the stakeholders do in the company? They give you money. If they don't give you money, you don't have a product, and you can't develop your product bigger. So actually, is what's interesting in an enterprise, you actually have to fight and defend your product as a project director. Why? Because everybody else is doing that. So like, there's one limited amount of budget you have for the entire company, so everybody's trying to get more for themselves, which is usually the case. Then you have the UX director. I don't want to take the bread of our guest, so he's going to tell you what he does. We have a deployment manager. So again, usually when you're a small startup, you have like one person that is responsible for deployments. In the case of a big company, when you have to be very precise and not screw up the production, you have to have a dedicated person that does only production deployments. And they're responsible for keeping everything, all of the versions of the software code you deliver to production in check. Then you have operations manager. So this is the person that actually takes care of keeping all of the users happy. And they work usually in collaboration with the support manager. So they have a testing team that tests all the bugs, and they go to the development team, and they actually check if the problem is relevant, how it can be fixed. And they usually communicate with the team that actually fixes it. And last but not least is the market manager. So market managers, in my case, was the people that I directly talk to, and they're the ones that tell me what they want. I'm going to explain more about them later. And just to explain what I said at the beginning, I'm sorry it's on this screen, it's a little bit bad, but you're going to get this presentation. So the main thing that I saw, and I think I want to do myself a little bit more research in the future, like product manager, product owner, and project manager, and a little bit of Scrum Master, you see there's a lot of overlap between different responsibilities. So that's why I kind of don't try to make the distinction between a product manager and product owner, because the devil is in the detail. So whenever you apply for such a position, you actually have to ask them what I'm going to be doing. Especially in Moldova, people write project manager at Работа.md, and they also want, besides managing the team, managing the product, oh, can you also do sales, please? Oh, can you also do content management? Oh, can you also do maybe, I don't know, maybe create content for the website? Like, everything. They want you to do everything. So the devil is in the details. Always ask, what are my direct responsibilities? Don't look at the title, because that doesn't actually give you anything. Okay, we went through all of the people that you're going to interact with and their responsibilities. Now we actually go to the tools. And if it was boring before, that's a story. I'm going to get even more boring right now. Yeah, I told you, enterprise is not for everybody, so you have to really like to work with amazing things, because what's the beauty of working with enterprise? You actually build something big. And that grandeur of building something big in a big company that satisfies tons of people is amazing. I can't, oh God, the NDA doesn't even allow me to tell how much money we were pulling for our product, but I digress. Trust me, it's a lot. But yeah, so here I want to be very short here, and I want to be very boring here, very intently, because tools, a lot of, especially in startups, what they have seen, they're like, oh, there's this amazing new tool, let's use it. And like, no. Why? You're going to waste your valuable time on trying to set up a new fancy tool that has not been properly tested by anybody, and you're going to waste your valuable time on just stuff that should not be, you shouldn't even bother. So, if you want to be productive as a product team, you have to have the following tools. Changes here and there. Email. Surprise, yeah, I know. Let me explain you why specifically email is number one. You as a product person or any representative of a product person have one thing that you constantly do. You collaborate with other people, and these people say that they're going to do something for you. So you want to have that on record. Because sometimes people screw up and they will say, oh, but I don't remember, we didn't discuss this. And then here's the email. You had to do it by this deadline. We had an agreement. So it's on them. Because if you don't use email, as you know, today you have amazing editing options in Microsoft Teams. You can delete messages if you want. You can make them disappear. I think in the new iOS, you can actually delete messages and edit messages and delete them. So you don't trust a messenger with a contract or like an agreement. Everything must be done via email. Sorry, it's boring, but that's the rules of the game. Calendar, again, surprise. You have to be in very good relationship with your calendar, because if you're not in a good relationship with your calendar, the calendar will screw you and not the other way around. And also, a small tip, when you have lunchtime, put a recurring meeting on lunchtime so nobody can book a meeting on that. Jira, very boring, but again, it does the work, and it works amazingly with Confluence. They work together amazingly because Confluence is your typical Wikipedia for the project, and Jira is your management of tasks. Office 365 and Microsoft Teams. Yes, I know I hate myself Microsoft Teams, but unfortunately that's the best tool we have right now for chatting. Slack is also good, but Slack lacks integration with Office tools. And last, Miro or Mural, whatever suits your boat for collaboration. Yeah. This is the boring part, and of course, something boring has rules. And last but, so the rules are the following. So this is where a lot of startups or companies screw up because they don't respect the rules, and again, they want to use something fancy. So all of the tools you use have to be identical for everybody. It can be that all of you use like, I don't know, Google Drive, and somebody's like fancy, oh, I'm gonna use my Dropbox because I have a subscription. No, you have to use all of the tools because it should be very easy to share with everybody. It has to be fast to onboard. Again, you don't want to lose time in an enterprise, because if your onboarding on a tool is long, you're not earning money. So onboarding to a tool should be easy and fast. Easy to provide access. Unfortunately, in the company I was working, I waited 3 months till I got all of the access I needed. It was painful. So make sure your access to an employee or on a project is as fast and as painless as possible. It has to be scalable, duh. It has to be guest-friendly and sharing, because you're getting this presentation. You can just take this list and see if your tools are actually that good. And it has to be accessible via any potato device you have on your hands, because you never know when you're actually going to need to access your work tools. Oh, God, the screen is hot. So now we finally get to the main dish, our sponge cake, layer cake. And I'm going to describe you the process, how we actually deliver the product itself. So, department strategy domains, that's the first step. Fancy words, let me explain it in simpler terms. So basically, in our case, what the department, like the top management did, they're saying, hey, this department, for this year, our strategy is the following. And they give you like 3 to 5 main pillars where you have to make improvements. Let's say pillar number 1, digitalization. It means that you have to improve and create new tools for the products you're using, or maybe new features that improve the whole being more digital thing. Then you have data quality improvements. Means you have to create new features specifically for data. And maybe, let's say, customer experience improvements, so the users like using your tool. That was our case. These were one of the things that we were doing on our department level. Then each product, what they do, they take and they create an individual product roadmap for the entire year. So basically what this document has, it has the list of by quarter, so like 3 months, 3 months, 3 months, 3 months. And they say, okay, in Q1 we're going to do this, in Q2 we're going to do this, in Q3 this, and Q4 this. Some of you might ask, how can you plan and be so sure that you're going to exactly do for an entire year all of these features? Nobody does. The thing is, you have to at least somewhat plan, because we work in Agile, so it's completely normal that we will change something as we go, but you have to have at least somewhat of an idea what you're going to be working on this year. So in our case, we had 6 products. Each product creates their own individual roadmap for the entire year, and we have a vague idea who's going to be working at the end of the year and a very clear idea what they're going to be working in the next quarter. What happens next, guys? Then you go to the quarterly OKRs. So for those of you who don't know, this OKRs is Objective Key Results. It's a framework for developing features and like delivering value to the company created by Google. I highly recommend learning about OKRs. It's a very good framework to like figure out what you're going to be doing. The key thing with Objective Key Results is you have an objective, increase sales. And then you specify, here are the key results, here's how we're going to actually do it. And then you plan for the 3 months what you're going to be doing, and then you go to the level of individual features. What are the features that will suffice in each of the key results? And last but not least, you release it to production. You might think that this is everything. Of course it's not. This is a layered cake. These are just the base. Now we have to put in the cream. So let's start with the individual product roadmap. So what happens on this level? You have a thing called product demands alignment. What does that mean? So basically, in our case, what happened, we were building a B2B product that was used internally for generating sales. That means that our users were actually the company employees. So what was happening? The markets came to us and said, hey, we have these problems and we want these features to solve these problems. And we were like, okay, give us a list and we're going to research all of them. So here, this is the place where they say, we want this. So it has to be like 2 months before the next quarter starts. Then what happens, on the level of quarterly OKRs, you have the prioritization and also design investigation. This is where you need the designers. You extremely need the designers specifically here. It's also good if you involve them here, but it depends on your company organization. In our case, we involved the designers when we were planning the OKRs for the next quarter and maybe the quarter after that. What did the designers do? The designers usually know almost the product the best, usually. If the designers knows the product better than the product manager, that's amazing. But also it's a bad sign that you're a bad product manager. In some cases, I saw in other departments that designers actually knew the product better than the product team. And also you do the prioritization. You discuss both with the tech team, the design team, and the entire product team. In our case, we had 7 teams, and we had 6 product owners. So all of us 6, with the project director, we had to discuss and prioritize which specific features we did. As soon as we did that, we gave that list to the designers, and they had to investigate what is exactly the problem, and can it be solved in a specific way or with a specific interface, or how we would solve that specific problem. Then you go to the individual feature. And then there's the boring stuff that everybody's familiar. You go down to the individual feature, you develop it, and you review it. It's very important at this stage to show as early as possible your feature developed to your users. Why? Because they will give you very fast feedback and will show you how to improve your tool without investing extra money down the line, redoing what you already did. So on this step, it's very important to show it to your users and get their feedback as fast as possible. And last but not least, when you release it to production, in our case, we had roughly 3,000 users. They were sales representatives. So we had to train them how to use the new features. So what we did, in our case, we had a person dedicated to training those people. And unfortunately, it wasn't the product team that was doing that, because that's actually usually the case, that the product team teaches users how to use it. In our case, we had a dedicated person, and she was specifically training the users, and she was only bothering us to show her once how the new feature works. So let me very fast talk about the most common problems. And my favorite word in enterprise, basically, I never had a meeting without this word. It's dependency. I hear people's pain in those laughter, the people who are laughing. Yeah. So when you work in an amazingly big enterprise, so I forgot to mention this, we weren't an IT company. We were a product company. We delivered physical products, but we were international. So you have involved logistics, delivery, ordering, purchasing, and all of those things that you need to involve to sell stuff. So in our case, it's very important to analyze both the downstream and the upstream systems for whatever you're doing. The favorite thing of any manager in a company this big is to ask how long it's going to take you to do this. My usual answer is, we really need to analyze the dependencies first. And even then, I still don't give them the number. Do you know why? Because you never know what's going to screw you. So dependency is something you have to basically wake up and think always about things that can go wrong. There was one case, we were doing a update, so there was a very interesting limitation. So you could order only, 200 items in one single cart. But considering that customers are dealing usually with 20,000 different articles, they want a bigger cart. So we had to increase it to at least 800. So we thought, okay, let's change this one simple field and it's going to be all right and good for us, because we're working with SAP. Here's a don't work with SAP. It's very painful. We can discuss it later. But yeah, and the problem that happened that because we didn't consider all of the dependencies, if we continued developing and we didn't find that problem, we would have broken the supply chain. So when you're delivering in the millions of dollars of merchandise, the last thing you want is the product not to arrive in the right place. But we found this dependency, we changed it, it took us 2 months, but we fixed it and we happily went to New Year's. Yeah. Different management frameworks, I already talked about it. You have your higher management thinking and working in waterfall, and your development teams are working in agile. You're definitely going to have clashes. The most classical one, so when you develop OKRs, you usually make them very optimistic. When you have a waterfall mindset management, you don't do that. You actually make them closest to actually what you're going to release. Because whenever waterfall management sees OKRs, and like, oh, you're going to do so much in this quarter, amazing. And if you don't deliver, they're going to screw you because you didn't deliver to what you showed them. So you have to actually undermine how much you're going to deliver. Ignoring designers, you have to involve designers everywhere. Like, my life changed when I finally had a designer in the team. So, like, weird part, when I joined the product I was working, my first question is, oh, cool product. Where's the designers? And they said, we don't have one. I'm like, why? Well, we have these old designs, mock-ups that were built, so we just reuse them. And I'm looking at the product, okay, I get it. So after 1 year, I actually finally had designers, and it was a blessing. So yeah, always have a designer on your team if you're working with the UI. Not using design sprints. I think we're going to have designers here speaking about it, but please use design sprints if you don't know what this is. This is the best and fastest way to actually develop a feature that is usable. Not what you think is usable, but you actually involve in the design sprints the actual customers, and they tell you if it's usable or not, and then you're building from the start something that's going to be used. Bad demands for designers. Product managers are notorious for writing bad user stories for designers. Yeah, some remarks. So if you're a product manager, please take some time and learn how to properly design, agree with the design team how you should submit design stories and design demands. Pleasing management. So this is something you should never do. So you have upper management, you always want to please them. That's the wrong thing to do, because if you please them, your team is going to suffer. And if your team suffers, you're not going to deliver in time. So the last thing you should always be doing is pleasing your management, because if you do that, the team is not going to like you, they're going to hate you, and you're not going to deliver actual value. People not fit for roles. So very common thing that you will see in enterprises, just because a developer is a good developer, he's often promoted into a leadership position. And that's actually the worst thing you can do by not understanding if he's actually a good leader. I've seen multiple cases when a good developer was promoted to a leadership position, like a team lead or something, but he was bad at communicating with people, and the whole productivity of the team dropped by 30 to 40%. So always test people that you put in leadership positions. And my favorite thing about enterprise, making things complicated. Why? Because it's somebody else's job. So my plea to you is always make the extra effort to make things as simple as possible, because your job is to deliver a good functioning product to your customers. So you should always think how I can make this simpler. Okay, I think it's enough for today, torture with enterprise stuff. Thank you for being such an amazing audience, and I don't think I have questions, so I don't have questions. Time for questions, right? Okay, find me later on the lunch break. Thank you very much.